Half a day, I'm in.
All right, so we do have a quorum now, so we'll go ahead and proceed. Actually, we have 4 of the trustees who are present. So the Public Defender Service Corporation Board of Trustees regular meeting for Tuesday, April 23rd will be called to order. Will they please call roll?
Chief Justice Robert J. Flores,
I'm here.
Presiding Judge Alberto C. Lamrena III,
He is excused. He's in transit right now.
Guam Bar President Jackie T. Tulahi,
Present.
Trustee Donna Muñoz Canata,
I'm here.
Trustee Dr. Christiana Whitman.
Present.
So 4 of the 5 members are here. We do have a quorum. A notice of the meeting has been published on the DOA and Public Defender websites, and also was played on KSTO radio to satisfy the requirements of the open government law and the publication in advance. And so it was done 5 working days and 48 hours as well in advance. So the first item is the approval of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting of April 2nd. Can I entertain a motion to approve the minutes subject to correction?
Motion.
It's been moved by Trustee Kanata,
A second.
seconded by Trustee Whitman. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There being no objection, those meeting minutes are approved. We'll now go to old business. If we can get a financial status update and the allotment releases. Mike.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Board of Trustees. PDSC received a total of $325,329 after the last board meeting, which brings PDSC to 93% and APD at 92%. For the ICJR, in March, PDSC received an additional funding of $44,208. As of March 31st, the expenses were $100,941 for personnel and $22,445 for travel supplies and equipment. The balances are at $61,162 for personnel costs and $1,448 for operations. This funding will be used until such time as Staff 22 is appropriated to us by the Governor's Office. Now moving on to EJC, the invoices for January, February, and March 2024 were submitted to HSS for a total of $48,036, but we have not received the payments as of today. Additionally, Fiscal and EJC has followed up, but has not received a signed copy of the MOU from DPHS for this funding. For the JAG, PDSC has submitted the quarterly report and invoice for $2,298 in April to BSP for the usage of the beam, which is the internet connection, for January through March 2024, and the purchase of a cellular telephone, which was given to DOC. A follow-up email was sent to BSP indicating that the sum of $4,262 is still outstanding as of today. The remaining balance of $404 has been exhausted in April and will be billed next quarter. That's all for the financial reports. If any questions, I'll be available.
Does anyone have any questions currently? All right. Thank you, Mike. We'll now go to the next item, which is the report from the PDSC Executive Director.
Okay, thank you, Chief Justice. We'll just table this till next board meeting since we have our budget and other items to discuss. We'll provide stats for the end of the second quarter as well.
Right, thank you. APD Managing Attorney, would you also like to table your
Yes, Your Honor,
report?
please.
All right.
Thank you.
And what about the Civil Law Center?
Yes, Your Honor, we'd like to table it as well.
All right. All right, then the next item is under old business is the amendment of the administrative assistant to the administrative officer. And who is going to speak on this matter?
Your Honor, I know that we did submit a proposed resolution, and really this will be to give the PDSC another option when that administrative assistant position becomes vacant. Currently, we don't have an administrative officer job description, and this is one that the Department of Administration has already rated and approved, and is in use within the executive branch. So it's just something that will allow our administration to I guess upgrade a position so that they can be used more readily by our administration for additional assistance. Given the fact that the needs of the corporation have grown over the last few years, we probably have like 5 different grants that are being managed by our office, as well as increased HR responsibilities. And so right now we have an AA that's resigning. And so when the position becomes vacant, we're hoping that we can convert it to an administrative officer position. It shouldn't cost that much more. It's just 1 letter grade up.
So will someone make a motion to place the resolution before the board for purposes of discussion? Anyone?
This is just for discussion. So
Yeah, at least initially for discussion purposes.
I move to place the resolution before the board for discussion purposes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All right, it's been moved and seconded for purposes of discussion. So Steve, does anyone have any specific questions for him? So right now, I guess the proposal is to create this administrative officer position, which will also go alongside the administrative assistant position, but only fill one of those positions depending on the qualifications or the needs at a particular moment, but only one of those, even though both positions will be available under the staffing pattern, funding will only be made available for one of the positions, and only one of the positions will be filled. Is that my understanding from what you were saying?
yeah, that's correct. Because right now we only have a management officer position within the PDSC list of positions, which is a higher level than an AO. So we want to actually just slowly upgrade the position. We think an AO would be sufficient, and that way it'll provide assistance really to both fiscal, HR, and even our administrative director in terms of increased duties, right? Because you can give more complex duties to an AO than you could an AA. And so, we believe it's necessary, and it'll be more cost effective than hiring 2 AAs, because 2 AAs still can't do the work of an AO because of the level of complexity of work involved. And so it'll really be able to provide, and like APD already has an AA, so our AO would be able to be supervised by our HR and our fiscal, and ensure that the services provided to CLC and APD are equivalent to what PDSC is receiving.
Remind me again, the AA minimum experience, I guess I pulled it up from last time, is 3 years of staff work and high school graduation, and the AO or equivalent, and then the AO position requires a college degree.
Yeah, that's correct, or equivalent. And these are policies that have been approved by DOA and have been in existence for quite a while.
I know Trustee Kanata expressed some concerns at the last meeting when this was being discussed, and so I didn't know if you had questions, Trustee Kanata.
Of course I do. I still think that, I mean, with everything that Steve has to say, I still think that the desk audit should be done on the different positions. I still think that this is a way to create I mean, without going through the complete process, we're creating another position. I don't want to be giving assistance to the assistants, and I'm still going to stand my ground. I still think we still need to, look into this further. I don't think a resolution should be the one to resolve this issue. If we're going to create another position, I want to know who, what, when, where, why, and how come. I still think the resolution is a little bit vague. I mean, it's vague to me. And I still think without desk audits for all the positions, because if he's saying that some of the, he's saying that some of the responsibilities aren't being done with, that need to be done, and it can only be done on an AO position. I mean, I don't see where. I mean, I don't have any of their job descriptions to figure out, what they're actually doing or what it actually entails. And until we get a desk audit for all those positions that he's talking about, I don't agree with this resolution. I think we should take this into executive meeting. I don't want to talk about it any more than to say, I want more answers than what's in front of me right now. So I'm not agreeing with this resolution. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. If we want to go into executive session, I think some of the matters that we need to bring up expose us and should be discussed in executive session.
All right, so I would like to make a motion to table this matter until we can address it in executive session. I understand that we've got the budget to consider today, so the motion is specifically to table it for the next meeting with the intent of addressing it at an executive session.
All right,
I second that.
All right, so a motion by Trustee Tolahi, seconded by Trustee Kanata. All those in favor of that resolution, of that motion to table for further discussion at the next meeting in executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the resolution passes. The next item then on the agenda is the budget. Excuse me, the next item on the agenda was the executive director pay adjustment. And I've been told that management requests that also be deferred until the next meeting so we can focus on items B, C, and D of the new business, which is the budget for this year. And so we will start with that and do that and table item A until the next meeting. So the next item is the fiscal year budget request, and who's going to make the budget presentation for us? Kathy?
I'll do the PDSC budget request, and that begins on
right,
29,
correct.
Page 29. Okay, so just going over the summary, the budget summary, what we're asking for, if we go down each line, in terms of personnel costs, we're asking for 6.2 million. A 16% increase over the fiscal year 2024. A bulk of that money is for the attorney pay increases that we just implemented back in April, or when, a few months ago. Is it on February? Back in February. So that's where the bulk of the increase is for FY 2025. In addition to the personnel costs, as you can see, if you go down to total operations, we've cut that down by 4%. So the decrease in operations, you could see that there's a 31,415. So the 30,000 that we used in FY 2024 was for our backup server that went into the cloud. That was 30,000. So we don't need that now that we've bought the server and we are cloud-based now. We don't need that for FY 2025. So that's where the reduction is in operations. So overall, what we're asking for in FY 2025 for public defender is a total of 851,874 increase. bringing us to $7,032,366 for our FY 2025 budget, which is a total increase of 14%. As I explained to the board earlier, the 14% really, the bulk is for personnel costs. And so if we were to go through, we provided the staffing pattern, both current and proposed. If the board members, the trustees had time to review the staffing pattern, basically most of our staffing pattern requests are at status quo. We have one new position that we are asking for, and that is for a paralegal. And that is on page, let me get that for you. So we're asking for an additional paralegal, and that is on page it should be page 62 of the budget. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not 62, 64. Oh, that's not it either. I'm sorry.
Oh, 67.
67 of the budget. I didn't print that out. Sorry. So if we went to page 67, we're just asking for one new position, and that is for the paralegal. So we'll be asking that we already have a paralegal 2. So we're asking for an additional paralegal 2. And so what we're finding is that, and Steve and John are here to support this request, is that most of our attorneys now are taking their cases for appeal. And so we have that, and trial. So to help with the trial work as well as any appeals work, we need another paralegal to service our 16 attorneys that we have on board. Do you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, and also, so I guess there's a shortage of employees at the AG's office. So our office really is preparing probably half, if not more, of the plea agreements that are being accepted by court. So like in my courtroom, pretty much our office is preparing all the plea agreements because the AGs they're taking too long and they're not able to produce it. So we need a paralegal to help our 16 attorneys and their secretaries draft these plea agreements. You want to?
I'd echo that, and sometimes the preparation of those plea agreements can really be the difference between somebody spending another week or month in jail or getting out, because if you reach an agreement that the plea is going to be time served, it's great, but somebody has to produce it and have a hard copy of it to present to the court. So in the courtroom that I cover most as well, we're drafting almost all the plea agreements ourselves at this point. So it's just there's a need to have someone to absorb some of this.
And then I just want to add, when we make comparisons with our budget at every fiscal year to that of the AG's office, almost every prosecutor has a paralegal and an investigator assigned to their team. So for us to ask for an additional paralegal isn't unreasonable. We find it, management finds that it's not unreasonable to make this request before the Board of Trustees. And then if you folks had time to go over contractual services on page 32, it highlights where we're asking for money. And so some of the things that I'd like to just point out, if just to explain to the board. So as you can see, I'm just going to go over the high ticket items so that I provide comfort to the board that these aren't exorbitant costs that we're requesting. So for Westlaw, we have 16 users. And so that per user, it's about $2,868 for us to have Westlaw for our users. And then if you go down to the 16,000.
Is there a comparison of the contractual from the current cost to the proposed? I mean, because what you're looking at 32, it's unclear to me when you look at 31, that's the current staffing pattern. And is what is shown in 32 the current expense versus the proposed?
Yes.
So where's the proposed and where's the difference between the current and the proposed and the increases?
Yes, you would find, so what we have in the current on page 32 We also have that on page 34 as the footnotes, correct? Mike? Yes. Did you find that, Your Honor?
Yeah, but I mean, the operations on the contractual services you're saying is actually going to be a $31,000 decrease. So I don't think that's really important to go through. I mean, if this is a budget that was approved last year and the current, and we're saying that because what you're showing on 34 is a $31,000 decrease for operations for contractual. So I don't think we, that's not something I think we need to worry too much about.
What I wanted to do, Your Honor, is just to provide some of the explanations for some of the ticket items that are on page 34 and so.
But I mean, if they were approved in last year's budget,
yes,
and the legislature approved that budget as well, and it was approved by the trustees last year.
Okay.
You know, I think what I would rather focus on is that we're looking at a increase of about $850,000, is it?
Yes.
From last year's general fund authorized of 6.1 to this year's request of 7,032,000. And so I think we should look at, and you were trying to point out that most of the increases relate to the salary increases as a result of the 22% pay adjustment for the general pay plan, and then of course the attorney pay plan 24% adjustment. And so the bulk of the increase is the continuation of those previously approved. And so it's really just organic growth for the attorney. Most of at least 500,000 of it represents salary increases, and then 365 for benefits and 5,000 for insurance. So you know, that's it. It essentially is coming all from there. There's a small increase for supplies and materials, and then a miscellaneous category. And I think we can look at the miscellaneous category because it's roughly a 50% increase from 50,000 to 75,000, or 25% increase. But there is only the one position that's being looked at, one position to be added, and that's a paralegal position to this year's budget.
Correct, Your Honor.
All right, and the rest of the amounts are all just based on standard increments and the pay adjustments that were previously implemented. So it's all organic growth as far as those.
That's correct.
All right. And then, okay, so that explains the first item. I think in operations, can you just briefly explain what the increase is on the supplies and equipment?
Yes.
Supplies and materials?
That would be in the miscellaneous right now.
No, supplies and materials separate.
Yeah.
Chief, could we go back 2 seconds to the question about the new paralegal position?
Sure.
I guess I'm not too familiar with the internal operations, right? But I hear that the request is primarily because we're having to draft more documents. We've got an entire, I think, $1 million dedicated to legal secretarial. We've got another $200,000-300,000 dedicated to legal clerical. And then we have the current fund, right? So we have clerk positions, we have. Is there a reason why any of those positions are not able to fill this gap, and that we need to expend another $72,000 on a new paralegal position?
Well, I mean, principally because, so our legal secretaries each probably take care of between 100 to 200 clients each. So when we do a trial and they have to drop everything and prepare for trial, then they tend to, you know, not basically not care for the rest of the clients. So the plan was to split up the attorneys between the two paralegals, and once it becomes a trial case, Then the paralegal can prepare all the trial documents, which is kind of consistent with the job descriptions. So I mean, we could convert all our legal secs to paralegals and enable them to do all the paralegal work, but then that would result in desk audits for everybody. And so it's.
I mean, Steve, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I'm asking about a function because I'm presuming you have a Word document that's very easily manipulated at this point, right?
Yeah,
The justification, right? The justification for the new paralegal position. I mean, I'm just concerned about the jump, right? We have to deal with that, the growth issues, right? We had the 22% increase and so forth. And I just am concerned that adding the new position, that we may not get our requested amounts. Of course, that's always the conservative, right, in me. But I'm just asking the reason why it is that this kind of job could not be absorbed by any of the other current positions. Like, I think John said that the attorneys are actually doing it themselves now. Is that right?
Exactly. We're having attorneys doing paralegal work when we have never even asked for an attorney increase, despite the fact that an 8th judge was appointed, right? So, you know, APD got an extra attorney when there was an 8th judge. We're trying to take care of that need without expanding the number of attorneys because there's, you know, such a shortage. So if we could shift some work to non-attorneys like paralegals, then, you know, we would prefer to do it that way. Because right now, attorneys, you're correct, are preparing plea agreements sometimes, as well as secretaries, which is, you know, kind of above their pay grade. And so it would fall upon the attorneys, and, you know, attorneys still need to meet clients and do the other legal work that a paralegal.
No, and thank you for saying that, Steve, because that for me is the most compelling argument to give you another paralegal, right? That there was a new judge, you haven't hired a new attorney to cover that 8th judge. And it would just be more prudent in terms of your funding to fund a paralegal versus an attorney, even if it was an attorney one. So yeah. Okay, I mean, I think the numbers have to be taken a look at again because I saw about a $3,000 disparity, by the way. I think the proposed summary is up at 162. But if you go to the proposed positions, I think it's down at 159. So if we can just tidy up any kind of inaccurate numbers, right, before any submission.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're definitely working on that right now. As a matter of fact, we just wanted to make sure that you folks had time to look at our numbers before. But we know our bottom line is 7.0. 7 million is what we're requesting. And you know, our spreadsheets, we're all tying them together. So we're still working on cleaning that out. So that would be cleaned up, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering the questions. I appreciate it.
All right, now that you've addressed the questions that Trustee Tulahi had on the additional paralegal and the work that's in there, let's just look at the other 2 items on the budget that are looking for increases. One is the supplies and materials, and the other is the miscellaneous provisions. So if someone can.
So, Your Honor, for the increase in supplies, we're required by law now to have an automated external defibrillator. That's going to cost about $3,000. So we're budgeting for that for this fiscal year. We need to have that implemented by the end of the year, December 2024. So we're looking at procuring that with this upcoming fiscal year budget.
Okay, I see that on page 35 that it's the AED for supplies and materials. And then what about the miscellaneous increase?
So what you'll see in the miscellaneous increase, part of the, although it's not 26,000, but a bulk of that, as you can see, training and career development, we put 32,000 for that. Normally we budget somewhere like 26. So we've asked for an increase. What had happened this current fiscal year was we brought in trainers from off island, and it cost us about 32,000. I don't know, some of you folks may have participated in that training that we had. So what we did was we had training for all of our attorneys from all 3 offices, public defenders, CLC, as well as APD, as well as our investigators. So what we've been finding is it proves to be more beneficial to have this training on island, bringing the trainers in. So based on our success of the last training, we have increased that amount from 26 to 32,000. And then another increase that we have is
The Guam
the Guam bar fees. Thank you very much, Guam bar president. So we've got 19 of our attorneys with the increase in the Guam bar fees. So that's a bulk of them.
So when you look at the request this year of 77,374 and the prior year amount, can you just identify the prior year? I know was 51,000 was what was authorized last year, which was, I know, a little less than what was expended in FY 2023. But it's 51,239, so that's the 26,135. And can someone highlight the actual numbers that constitute that 26,000? I know we're saying Guam bar dues. Well, what's the difference between Guam bar dues from last year and this year? What is the difference in training budgets from last year to this year? Those are the only two you pointed out.
Yeah, so what we have with training, we have about 5,000 more that we're requesting for. And then the Guam bar fees went from 150 to 450.
No, 300 too.
No, they did not.
300, I'm sorry, Jackie.
It was $150 per
I think
attorney.
for
So we're
19
talking about a $3,000 increase. That does not justify 26.
So we're up to 6,000, right, Mike? Where else are we seeing
The membership and the NETIL and the NLATA.
membership fees?
Yeah.
When you're looking at it, I mean, I think it's important when you're looking at the increases rather than doing it at the lump sum to actually have the categories. It's easier to explain as well when we're justifying it to the legislature.
So we'll
To
have that
what those
prepared, Your Honor.
categories are.
We'll have that prepared for our presentation of with the legislature. And we'll also have that comparison for the board right after this meeting. We can provide that.
Yeah, but I mean, so we've heard why there needs to be at least an $8,000 increase in the miscellaneous category, 5,000 more for training, and an increase in bar dues. I noticed that one of the categories was not funded last year, the NLADA, I guess, that it said it wasn't, or it wasn't funded in 2024, but we're including it back in here.
Right.
But I mean, what are the other amounts that are increasing there? I mean, presumably the board stipends are staying the same.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know about the notary bond.
There is everything else.
Yeah.
Everything else. Then we have the
Authorized is the one that's not complete. It's a portion of the miscellaneous. Basically, everything we request for is.
Do you have the miscellaneous category amounts for 2024? Then we can just look at them and we'd be able to see where they are.
Yeah, we don't have it with us at the board meeting, but we can provide that to the board right after this meeting. We can provide the comparisons.
Yeah, page 36 indicates miscellaneous last year. The same category is $4,000, 4,307.
Yeah, right here on page 36. That's what's funded, authorized.
Well, yeah, well,
Yes.
last year, if you look at the miscellaneous under category 290, it shows that authorized was only 4,300. And then yet you have, but yet if you look at page 29, under miscellaneous, it says authorized was 51,000.
You see that one?
Yeah, that's just the director's office.
Oh, yeah, so that what you're looking at on page 36 is just for the director's office. It's not for the
The
entire,
total amount, okay.
so what we have to do is pick it up from each section.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
that.
the total, but presumably the total amount you picked up for each section adds up to 51,239, which is what was authorized on page 29, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So what we're trying to do is understand what is the delta, what is the difference between the 77 requested now and the 51?
You have
And no one's, and other than the two amounts that you mentioned, the Guam bar, $3,000 increase and 5,000 for training.
And then the AED for another 3.
No, that's supplies.
That was a separate,
We have under miscellaneous 29,000.
the AED was a separate provision.
You're right, 39, page 39.
That was under supplies, not under
Yeah, correct.
the miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous for the attorneys.
I mean, since the board can't provide the management can't provide the explanation for that now, I think that what we should do for purposes of this budget is just look at the authorized amount, unless you can show the requested amount was different. Use the authorized amount from last year and increase it by the 8,000 that's shown. We should have some lapses available that maybe we'll be able to take care of some of the operational expenses that might be beyond what's there. But it doesn't seem like unless you can do it quickly, because we've got to take a vote on this budget. And maybe while we review the other two budgets, if you want to go and pull that information, if you can, then we can try to look at it and come back to that item. But, you're looking, that's what I said, you're looking at almost, roughly a 25% increase on that category. And so we just want to make sure that we've justified what that amount is. And I haven't heard anything other than 2 items.
Yeah, we're getting that right now, Your Honor. You can move on to APD and CLC, and then we'll get that for you.
All right. Because I don't think, there's nothing else that sticks out at me other than the increased items that we're talking about here. And anyone else have any questions for PD on this budget? So we'll go ahead and move on then, if no one does. And we'll go ahead and head to the APD budget, which is found beginning on page 69 of the materials. All right, so who's going to do the APD budget, Annie?
Hi, Your Honor. Yes, it's actually starts on page 71. The other ones are just like a
intro. Yep.
Right. So last year, for fiscal year 2024, we were actually authorized 1.692342. And so we're asking for an increase of $137,077 for a total of 1.829419.
All right, and that should say fiscal year 2024, right? Not 2023.
Correct. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
2020, right, correct. I'll fix that. Oh, good eye.
And so can you go over the $137,000 increase? Obviously some of it is organic growth of 122,000, presumably, just based on the pay increases that we've talked about, that have been implemented already, but this is just over the last budget cycle because there were.
Correct.
Right, that's 122,000 and then 6,000 for contractual services. Is that the same amount or is that the increased amount that you're showing there?
That's the increased amount. Let me wait 1 moment. Let me see. Yeah, 14% increase. That's correct.
Right, but again, the same things. Which items are increasing? Because the total amount that's shown there.
Right. The increase, actually, Your Honor, sorry, if I may, is the Westlaw. our increase went up. Right now, we have not had an increase in Westlaw since we started. And so that's the increase at,
How much is the increase for Westlaw?
one moment, let me look at from last year. One moment. Unless Mrs. Hattori can jump in. I know she knows it more than I do.
Okay. So APD entered, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, APD entered into a increase in Westlaw for the next 3 years, starting this year. It went from $1,000 to 1,800
And that is per attorney?
years. Huh?
Is that per attorney or what is
No,
that?
that's for the 6 licenses we currently have for attorneys.
That's for all the licenses. So that's an $800 increase then for next fiscal year.
Right.
For Westlaw.
And then it will increase for 3 years at 3%. And then after the 3rd year, it's just gonna go back down to 1,000 or under.
Yeah, but we're only looking at for the next fiscal year.
Yes,
So
yes, nurse.
the next fiscal year is going to be an $800 increase for Westlaw. So you still have from the 6,220, you still have $5,400 for operations. What are the other increases?
No, I'm sorry, that's 800. That's, hold on. The increase is about $516 per month. So times 12. It's 6,200 for the year increase for Westlaw.
Oh, so the entire increase is
Yeah.
attributable to Westlaw, or basically, yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so it's
That's what I'm
only Westlaw that's going up.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you, I'm sorry, I don't have control of that. If you scroll down to the defibrillators added into small equipment.
Right, and we understand that already based on the requirements of public law. So, I mean, obviously, if that's a mandate that the legislature expects all the agencies to have, I mean, one would expect that they would fund that as well because it's to fulfill a mandate. So
Correct.
those are the only 2 increases is the Westlaw and the defibrillator. And then the rest of it is organic growth.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Dre about the
I'm sorry.
APD budget? All right. And then let's go to the next budget, which is the CLC. And that starts on page 93. So Carol, are you gonna talk about this?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm going to talk about it.
All right.
The amount we're requesting, we haven't had local funds, but the amount that's being requested is in total is $1 million, $1,031,212 that accounts for the cost of personnel as well as operations. As you know, the Civil Law Center receives several federal granting sources, but the granting sources is only equal to about less than $400,000 a year. The EJC grant increased slightly this fiscal year to $226,970. And the STOP grant is at $114,047.19. We do utilize ARPA right now. That's what's holding this office together is the ARPA funds, but that's eventually going to be exhausted and no longer available. ICJRs also, the uncertainty is there as to whether or not it's going to be offered or not, but if it is, we're obviously going to apply, but that's a small amount as well. So the personnel cost that's being allocated or based on the 1 million that's being requested comes out to about 84% of the budget, which is 865,982. That incorporates the 3 attorney positions in this office, as well as the other staff, which is 1 legal sec supervisor, 2 program or project coordinators, and 2 clerical positions. We do have a 4th attorney who is, or I say 3 attorneys because Jessica just got sworn in, so we're hoping to transition into an attorney 1 position, but the 4th attorney is part-time, and she's contracted, so she'll be continuous on the federal grant money that we receive. The operations cost accounts for about 16% of the 1 million being requested. That's the $165,230. The contractual expenses are similar to the other 2 divisions. It's Westlaw, our database. It also, any of our IT needs is under that. Also, the equipment cost accounts for the defibrillator for this division. And the rest is pretty much the basic things like office space, supplies and equipment. Sometimes we have a miscellaneous expense. We do have like interpreter needs. We're working with the courts. I know that they're speaking with you guys about including us to utilize the court translators for our services here, but that's basically what's being asked for, Your Honor. The difference from this budget request and what we expended last fiscal year is about $175,000. That's because of the increased cost for increments based on the pay scale.
So the personnel services, which looks to go up from 730,000, and was what the projection was. Was that when you say projection, was what was authorized?
No, so that amount includes the projected cost. Yes, it includes the increments, or the pay scale increase, and then it includes the that we're now putting an attorney 1 position in that.
No, this is for CLC fiscal year 2024.
Correct, the upcoming.
It still shows it as a projection. So
we can change that, Your Honor, because that's what is going to be requested.
No, well, the request is going to be the CLC fiscal year 2025, right? Because the 2024 budget was already, I was just asking, was the budget that was approved for CLC last year 731 for personnel services?
I don't believe, I'm not too sure. I wasn't here at the start of the fiscal, but I don't know if we actually submitted. This would be our first time submitting an actual
budget.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, I wasn't here last year either. I don't know. Trustee Tulahi was and Trustee Kanata was. So
this is our first year that we will be requesting a budget with local funding, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So so last year, though, I mean, that was what we expended was 731, and review for me, because down below we have 192,000 showing as grants offsetting the total appropriation.
That's actually that's DSC. That's the elderly grant, Your Honor, from Division of Senior Citizens. That's what we received. There was a slight increase this upcoming fiscal year. They gave us 226,000, Your Honor.
And you made reference to other funding sources.
There are other funds, correct. There's the STOP grant, which funds our TAC, our advocacy, and that's a small amount as well. That's about 114,000, Your Honor, a year.
Okay.
So really the total amount we receive and what's going to happen is we'll offset and bill to those grant sources. We do have a rollover. I hear we have a rollover budget or carryover budget. So we would be billing any federal grant monies to these federal sources that we do get that would offset our operations cost, Your Honor.
And so the grants that are received here and what's projected to be received, for example, in fiscal year 2025, because that's just a projection, it shows 192, the exact same amount that was received in 2024 and 2023, but that's just from the public health one, and that's going to remain the same. Where are the other grants shown in terms of offset against your budget?
I can have them include that, Your Honor. It would be the STOP grant that they would be including, because ARPA is a public defender, is overall among public defenders, the divisions and public defenders. So the only 2 specific grants we get that is allocated strictly to our division, or there's 3, is going to be the STOP, the Division of Senior Citizens grant, and the ICJR. Those are the 3 that are specific to civil law, Your Honor. We can include.
And how much is the ICJR grant?
The ICJR, I think I want to say it's almost like it's going to be exhausted, but it's about 61,000. Can you correct me, Mr. Mike? I think it's $61,161.
Okay. And again, you're not asking for any new positions, just, this is just based on the existing amounts that's there. Now,
That's
the
correct.
budget is, even though the budget is gonna be broken down under the Civil Law Center, it's gonna be included as part of the total Public Defender Service Corporation budget request, right?
That's correct, Your Honor. That's the intention.
Yeah, but I mean, it's gonna be a separate line item, hopefully like APD. That way, there won't be we're trying to keep them separate, especially for funding as well. Because in the past.
And this year, how was the appropriation done separately for APD and PDSC by the legislature?
Well, yeah, we received the full amount, and then apart from that amount, they cut out a section for APD. But it went directly through our office.
They itemized it, yeah.
So the legislature appropriated the entire amount to the Public Defender Service Corporation with a direction that a certain portion went to APD, or how was that?
Yeah, they included a section that had language that said the amount of blah, blah, blah is going to be for alternate public defenders. So it was like a section underneath public defenders. There was the total budget provided, and then they added another section.
And the reason why we want to keep it separate is because the legislature has appropriated monies directly for civil attorneys, but prior directors kind of commingled it, and then they ceased to exist. So we want to make sure that the legislature knows they're appropriating it for the Civil Law Center and not for the criminal side. We think they'll gather more support that way.
So Carol, can we go back to so there's no new position, so all of the amounts, the differences for personnel is strictly organic growth based on the regular increments, the increased pay from the implementation of the new attorney pay plan and the 22% general pay plan, and the corresponding increase in benefits. Now, and the contractual services, presumably some amount for Westlaw, I guess, under the contractual basis. You're on the same contract as PDSC is with Westlaw?
I think they allocate funding for our division. So we also have a totally separate.
When you say they, who's they?
Public defenders, yes.
Okay. But so that amount is included. Is it one contract for PD, APD, and CLC with Westlaw?
I can't answer that.
Two
Maybe
separate contracts, yeah, one for PDSC that includes CLC and one for APD.
Okay, so APD and PDSC have different contracts with Westlaw.
Correct.
And PDSC's contracts include the CLC. What is the contract with PDSC for the Westlaw services? Did you guys experience an increase similar to what APD experienced?
Well, so we haven't decided if we're going to go with the AI Westlaw services yet. So if we do, then it'll go up. But we're just using the traditional Westlaw right now. So
correct.
But it was my understanding from Dre was it was based on the contract that they had signed and the new contract kicking in for the increase that they were experiencing. What is the situation with your contract?
We haven't renewed it yet. It's still status quo. We haven't gone up for renewal.
All right, so there's no increases on Westlaw there. So there shouldn't be an increase for Westlaw for CLC. So Carol, what are your increased costs then for your contractual services? Because you're almost doubling your contractual service amount.
I'm not sure what was listed under contractual. I know that they utilized what we expended this current year and just did the proposal, but it might be related to interpreter services that we contract out, as well as we have our own database down here that's separate and apart from APD and public defenders. We all actually have different databases. So
I'm a little confused also.
I also think it's related to the so we have a retired attorney that's working part-time with them, and that's under contractual, right? Right, Carol?
I believe it may be listed under contractual, correct? I need to confirm with
I
Mr.
think now it's not listed under contractual, right? Or-
So who's under a contract?
Cat Focus Seguenza.
She's so, but that's being funded with through the LAS grant.
Yeah, but if it's funded entirely by a grant, and we're not reflecting that grant in the offset here,
We did, we reflected in the offset, Your Honor. That might be
on the
the,
192, it's included in there.
that's correct, Your Honor.
But, so, but that grant's also expiring, so that doesn't, I mean, so I don't understand the 97,000 doubling it. And if you look at, and I'm a little confused, because if you look at 93, page 93, you show the fiscal year 2023 expenditures 27. You show the fiscal year 2024 projection, and actually probably that should have been what was, I'm more interested in what was authorized from the budget. Although this is the first budget, but we think we'll expend that. So I guess maybe that makes sense since the fiscal year is not done yet. And then you have the projection for 25 showing 97. If you go to the next page, the budget digest 95, I guess, and I guess this is just under the attorneys, and maybe that's why it's different. And then there's additional amounts that will come up in the legal secretarial services, and also under the legal clerical services, and under the special project coordinators. Is Kat a special project coordinator? Is that what her?
No, she's an attorney. She functions as an attorney, part-time attorney here, Your Honor. Contracted.
She's not in the staffing pattern.
She's not. She does fall under contractual, Your Honor. And so if we were to correct this budget, as I mentioned, this 192 is going to go up to 226,970. And so Kat consumes about, with her I'm trying to get her amount, but with her.
But she's included
benefit,
in the 50,000 already, right?
yes.
And her contract remains the same, the amount that we're paying her on a contract, or is it going up?
It remains the same at this time.
Yeah, so her contract doesn't account for the difference. I'm trying to understand the difference between basically doubling our contractual services. What is the difference for doubling our contractual services?
I think we had an issue. I know one of the issues that we've had was with the interpreters. So we get billed by private interpreters, and it costs, their cost is much higher than the court. So that's why we've been addressing it with the clerk of court and your staff to see if we can work on an MOU to include us. But so our billing per hour is like almost at $100 for private interpreters. And we utilize.
So where's the breakdown of the contractual service increase? Where can we look at this breakdown?
I don't have it here. Maybe an internal, I can provide that to the board. I would need to speak with Mr. Mike on the breakdown.
I mean, it seems like we weren't, Mike, we weren't really prepared to justify these differences in the contractual services, doubling the amount. I mean, we need to understand that as a board. Similarly, going back then to the PD, since it doesn't seem like they have that information, going back to the PD's budget, in terms of the increased miscellaneous items that we had asked about, have you been able to identify, besides the 3,000 for the dues and the 5,000 for training?
Yeah, Mike needs to work on that number.
So then I suggest that we just approve the budget without the additional increase for that category, other than adding the 3,000 for the Guam bar dues and the 5,000 for the training increase. And that we, instead of the 77,000, we just increased last year's amount, which was, let me get back to that. The last year's amount was,
239.
yeah, 8,000, but we have 51,239. We increased that to 59,239 instead of the 77, since it's not clear that you've made any justification at this point for that increased budget. And if there's a need for the increase in those miscellaneous expenses, we can look to do that. Potentially when the need arises, looking at any remaining lapse funds that might be available for that. And then going back to the CLC budget, Mike, I mean, obviously they don't have, and they can't explain necessarily why there's this doubling of the contractual services from 50,000 to 97,000.
Your Honor, if I can ask Mr. Mike, does that incorporate our Clio, our software, our database, the contractual?
Yes, yes.
So that might be, that's probably the increase. The 50,000 was for Cat Focus's salary. And then the remainder is accounted for we have two different, so we utilize Bamboo, we utilize Clio. And then of course, we have our other software for our system. So that may be the difference because each of us is licensed under that. So we pay per license. And I think we may also have in our contractual,
So you didn't have this stuff last year? In the $50,000?
They may have, it may have been incorporated into PDSC. This might be just the breakdown now of specifically our budget, the cost of our system. So it might have been in PD's budget last year because they may have funded it through their IT, but I'm just saying that cost amount, I'm looking at it and I know if we're gonna have our own separate budget, what we're submitting accounts for our database and our the rest of our software that
but then that amount should, obviously there should be a reduction on PD's side pro rata if it's gonna be assigned to you, a portion of the overall amount and allocated. Right. And I didn't see that was reduced necessarily on PD's side. I saw the Bamboo on the PD side that's there. Kathy, Mike, I mean, somebody's got to give them a lifeline. We've got to be able.
I'm verifying with Mike because I also think for CLC, there's also an increase in users at CLC compared to the last fiscal year budget. So we have an increase in the number of users using their database platform.
They have no new hires versus last year.
Mike can get the difference.
But 2024 is already estimate.
Can I make one particular point about all these different services? I've heard Bamboo, Abacus, Clio now, and Westlaw, right? So we've got all these multiple services. I think policy-wise in the future, we need to start considering the alternative of looking at one contract for our three entities, right? I don't know. I don't know if it's more expensive the way you're doing it.
I think they're all under one contract, Jackie, except for Westlaw. And that was, I mean, that's my understanding from what's explained is all that, everything is under one contract except Westlaw. And Westlaw is only split up between APD and PDSC. And we may obviously want to think about whether there's economies of scale in joining those contracts.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
But the contract is, I mean, we're looked at one parent, but in terms of two separate contracts, I mean, they bulked us in terms of the fees, but we have APD, we split the contract so that APD takes care of their Westlaw contract and we take care of ours, since they've got financing for it. So we're still bulked together as one, but in terms of payment, it's separated out.
But I understood the terms were different, Kathy.
Correct, and APD just renewed their contract, but I mean, in terms of the cost per user, they're looking at us as one big whole. So APD just renewed their contract with their additional service, and we're looking for that for our office as well. So I think Stephen and John were to meet with our rep to see if we were gonna add on to Westlaw once we renew our contract, but we're considered one. They just separated us out. APD just recently renewed their contract and added additional services.
Yeah, I was gonna
You
say
see-
some of the costs, Jackie, we can't merge some of the programs because, you know, we remain, we kind of want to keep the conflict wall up and remain a separate office. And so our actual database is not linked to PDs or APDs in any way. So it's just our database with our users. So that's what is accounted in. I think our budget is that the fact that we have a separate database. We utilize MVP, but nobody has access to our database in the other two divisions.
Okay, I mean, obviously, those are kind of operational things, right? Is if we're trying to comply with certain requirements. But kind of my understanding just from what we were saying out loud, right, is that there are separate contracts. So I understand what you're trying to do, especially with the CLC. We want to segregate your costs because we need to see where those separate costs come in, because we want you to be kind of sort of self-sustaining in terms of the financial information that you're providing to us, right? So if there are any bulked costs that your amounts are being segregated to the portions that you're using. My only concern with Westlaw was the renewal of a contract independent of APD, but if all of us were together under one contract, I don't see any reason why it's not a database of ethics obligations, right, of our clients. Westlaw is a research database, right? So it doesn't make any sense why we would be a separated amount. I don't know if they give us better rates if we have 25 licenses versus 10 licenses, you see? So this is something I'm saying that for the future is something what we might want to explore, especially since PD is at a point of considering entering into a brand new contract.
And you know, in pointing out the contractual service, PD said their Westlaw costs remain the same. You know, versus you know, other than or I guess they said they thought there was a $3,000 increase. Dre pointed out what their increase was and explained that in the why it went, you know, up to 16,000 for this year for APD. But if PD's or if I mean, if PD's contract, which covers also the CLC attorneys, hasn't gone up, then the same increase for I'm still don't understand. No one's been able to provide any explanation to me yet, or to the trustees yet, what the increase is for the contractual services, doubling the contractual services for this fiscal year. Going from 50,000 to 97,000. So we're coming up on now 1:45 already. We've been in this meeting for an hour and 15 minutes. Obviously, I think, you know, the main areas for increase were highlighted in the budgets that were submitted, but the justifications, you know, have not yet been provided to the trustees for the items. Obviously, the personnel has all been set forth. There's only been a request for one new position in the APDs, which seems to be well justified, the paralegal position. And the increase in terms of the personnel costs obviously are it's pretty much all organic except for that one position. We've already agreed that we're not going to fund the full increase under the miscellaneous category that's accepted, I mean, or at least proposed, of 77,000. They've only been able to set forth the justification of 8,000 for the miscellaneous amounts. And APD's budget, I think they've gone forward and provided the explanation for their increase that's set forth there. And then on CLC, we're missing justification for the increased amount for their contractual services. Why they need to go from 50,000 to 97,000. So can we move forward then and at least take care of passing the budget with, and I guess we'll act on each one independently, I suppose. Since you're going to separate them out, even though they get submitted as a whole. So we'll first act on the Public Defender Service Corporation budget. Can I entertain a motion to approve the budget with the adjustment of, and this is the total amount that's reflected in the increase, going back just so we're all on the same page, pardon the pun, page 29. Where we, the total budgeted amount would be for personnel services would be 6,296,494, which represents all organic growth, but with one added position, request for one added position of a paralegal. The total operations amount is not going to be 77,374 for the fiscal year 2025 request, but will instead be 59,239, which was the 8,000 that they were able to point out for the Westlaw services and the of $3,000 and the training and career development increase of $5,000 more. And so with that amount that's in there under the miscellaneous category instead of the 77. And so whatever that total amount comes to, can we entertain a motion to approve that budget?
I'll move.
All right, moved by President Trustee Telahi. Second? Second by Trustee Kanata. All those in favor of that budget, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that amount is approved. Now let's go to the APD budget. And that is found on page 71. And APD's budget is basically a status quo budget, except for the increase of $6,000 for Westlaw. And then, of course, the personnel is all organic growth. And then the AED, which as we note is required under Public Law 143-37. So the budget as submitted by APD appears to be justified for the increased items that they're looking for the Westlaw and for the defibrillator, and then the organic growth for salaries. So can we entertain a motion to approve APD's budget?
Motion.
All right, moved by Trustee Kanata, seconded by Trustee Terlahi. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, and that budget is approved. And now we'll go to the final budget, the CLC budget. And CLC is basically a status quo. And this is found in page 93. It's essentially a status quo for personnel services in terms of no new hires, just the organic growth related to the increases in the personnel from the 22% general pay plan and the 24% attorney pay plan. And then on the operations side, it's pretty much the same. There's in fact a reduction in equipment. The only thing that is has not been yet, justification hasn't been provided for, is the contractual service amount from 5783 to 97,978. And so I'm open for a suggestion from any of the trustees concerning this budget. And really, I think the focus is what is the contractual services and what amount should be adopted for that. For approval.
Chief Justice, so that contractual amount, really, it's going to be funded by the grant anyway. So If you don't want to increase it, that's fine. It's really for the cat Seguenza's
But
contract.
that's not, because if you look at the contractual for Cat Seguenza's included in the fiscal year 2024 projection, 50,000. And it's already shown under the grants received, the 192 below. This is a doubling of that amount. We're
Yeah.
not doubling Cat Seguenza's.
Oh, no, we're definitely not.
Yeah,
So, but I don't think she was included in that contractual amount in 2024, right? Was.
well, Carol said she was, but I don't know.
Your Honor, if we can prove, I mean, if they could give us justification for that increase, can we approve the budget as is? Subject to the proof
Well,
of
we're
why we
supposed to
increased it?
submit it. I think the budget has to be submitted by May 1st to the
Okay.
legislature. So we're not going to have another opportunity before then.
Okay,
So I'd rather just have us adopt a number and submit it. And with the recognition that the number that is provided has to be justified.
Got
And
it.
I think right now, the only thing that I'm relying to a certain degree on faith, because there isn't a separate breakdown of what the total amount of the contractual services are. They say it's based on, the amount that's being paid and funded by a grant to Cat Seguenza. But that's 50,783 for this fiscal year. And I don't know why there's an increase to 97,000 for contractual services for next year. So,
if we kept it at 50,783,
yeah, I mean,
will we
think
accept
I think that might be what we were required to do in the absence of any justification for the increase. And we're taking at face value that the projection of 50,7083 in contractual services is justified for this fiscal year. And I presume, based on the contract that we have with Cat Seguenza, that's included in that amount. And then we can, obviously, we'll have to look at it. And if there's something that we missed in terms of that, there's always the opportunity to try to bring it up and seek maybe a separate appropriation later, or look to have lapse funds cover it. But I just haven't heard any justification beyond the why there needs to be an increase to 97,000 currently.
Your Honor, may I ask, Mr. Mike, is the notary services included in contractual? The notary, our notary, the ones that are down here in my office?
No, they're not.
That's missing.
All right, so Trustee Kanata, are you proposing that the amount for contractual remain the same at 5783? Is that your proposal?
I was proposing that just so that we can move forward, and
Yeah.
because you're saying that we don't have a justification right now, but to move it forward, just so that we have something. I mean, I don't mind, and you're right about it's almost 50%, but I don't know. I mean, Mike's supposed to answer that question that Carol's asking him, right? Because we're looking at a difference of what, 40-some thousand? What is it?
Yeah, 47,000 roughly,
Yeah,
47,200.
200. So
You're doubling your budget basically. And
yeah,
and no one has been able to say to us why.
yeah.
So, all right, so
My
okay,
motion
that's
would be
proposal.
to move it to 5783.
All right, so there's a motion to approve the budget except as is for the fiscal year 2025 projection, except that contractual services remain at 5783 instead of the proposed 97,978. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, second by Trustee Talahi. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, there being no objection, that budget as adjusted also passes. All right, so that takes care of the budgeted items on the agenda. We have anything for executive session now? No, but we will for next meeting. Anything on public discussion? We do have the Sixth Amendment Center, but considering the time, we'll talk about those recommendation and management's report that they put together, which was attached to the materials at the next meeting. And the next meeting will be on Tuesday, May 28th at 12:30. Motion to adjourn?
Motioned.
All right, seconded by trustee
Seconded.
Lai. There being no objection, the Public Defender Service Corporation will now stand adjourned. Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
Thank you.
You.
So what is it?
So with the